Okay, great.
All right.
So, Costa, tell me a little bit. What do you know about Vembu and what do you know about the product? What have you been informed?
Stavros, who should be, with us, is actually
Yeah.
the expert. Quite frankly, I know nothing of it, but Stavros knows pretty much everything. Stavros is a gold partner, as I told you, of
Right.
Vembu. So he's
Right.
very well aware of all your solutions and all the offerings that you have. And as a matter of fact, he's the one who suggested you to us.
Right.
We're going to be doing this mostly for Tasso's benefit, who's of course head of operations, and he would like to have an idea of how things are happening, the way you do
Right.
it. And I'm only going to be here to answer any perhaps business-related questions, if
Okay.
so, and hopefully Stavros may get into more technical questions
Right.
if that's ever going to be the need. So.
Okay.
Um,
Well, with that being said, I think what I'm gonna do, Costa, and if this is okay with you, I'm gonna go through a brief company overview about Vembu, and then I'm gonna give you a very high-level review of the product, some of the features, and then maybe pass it over to Thiyagu, and then you can see the product in action. And then if,
Sounds
at
good.
any point, if you have any questions, you can just stop us and ask us, and we'll be more than happy to answer those for you.
Excellent.
Okay, so let's get started. So about Vembu Technologies. Vembu Technologies was founded in 2004. It's a private company. It has been profitable since 2006. Uh, Year to year, it's been growing, so it's been doing pretty well. We're currently headquarters here in Dallas, Texas, Addison. We service
Right.
about
Right.
4,400 partners worldwide, and they in turn service about 50,000 businesses. Most of our partners are in North America. We got some in Europe and very few in Asia Pacific. Um,
Right.
in terms of our target audience, we sell pretty much to anybody. So we sell to value-added resellers, we sell to enterprises, we sell to small and medium-sized businesses. And on the bottom left corner, you can see some of our consumers and some of our partners. So we have Terramark, Buchanan, Q-Source, etc. Uh, Going a little bit more about the history of where Vembu has come from. Since 2004, Vembu has had a strong heritage in the storage and backup industry, uh, which has led to two main products right now, which is Vembu BDR and Vembu Online Backup. Vembu BDR is meant to be an on-premise solution with an optional cloud DR. And Vembu Online Backup just takes away the on-premise and goes directly to the cloud DR. Both of
All
these
right.
solutions uh, are meant to be a universal backup solution for all physical and virtual environments. And the reason I say that is because there's a study out there that businesses usually use like 3.5, I think, backup software to back up all their environments. So you need one backup for physical, one backup software for your virtual. And what Vembu try to do with Vembu BDR is they try to make one product which you can use to back up from your endpoints all the way to your virtual environment. Okay. Now let's go a little bit more in depth into the main product, which is Vembu BDR. Its current version is 3.0. I believe that not too long we're going to be releasing 3.1, which has some minor improvements. But with 3.0, we see a unique value proposition with it, just because it is a very simple product to use. It works across multiple environments. It works across multiple operating systems, whether they be Windows, Linux, or Mac. Uh, and it also helps protect any applications running within those systems. So like applications like Exchange, SharePoint, MySQL, etc. So we do what we call application consistent backup. And by that I mean that we tell whatever the environment is that's running the application, hey, we're going to take a backup, make sure you stop what you're doing, so there's no corruption, and we do automatic loss truncation. And all this comes down to being able to restore those applications properly and being able to do granular recovery of those applications. Besides the actual backup, we do disaster recovery, of course. which is bare metal recovery, instant VM recovery, VM power replication, and many other types of restore. With Vembu BDR, you do get one centralized monitoring, and with this centralized monitoring, basically you have a single pane of glass where you can see all your backups, you can see the space that they're consuming, you can see the different restore options that you have, and you can even set it up to receive email notifications about if a backup is successful, if there is some type of error, whatever it may be. And of course, you do get the optional Cloud DR, which is hosted in Amazon. It has several compliance like HIPAA, high-tech, and it gives you the ability to spin VMs on the cloud. And this is important just because in case of site-level disaster, you have an extra DR on the cloud which you can utilize.
Right.
Okay. Now, going a little bit of how the deployment works for this product, like I said, it's an on-premise solution. So the product itself is a client-server architecture. You would install the clients in the machines that you want to protect. So whether it be a physical server, VMware, Hyper-V, or endpoint. So I'll take the example of VMware. You would install these client agents.
Excuse me. Does it also support Linux operating systems and Windows operating systems? Is it
Yes,
operating system aware?
yes, yes it is.
Agnostic? Or somehow? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. If you at the end of the webinar, we'll show you some of the operating systems that we support for backing up, I think, the Linux environment. I know we support the major one. Okay, so in the case of VMware, you install the client agent in one of the VMs, and from that VM, you're able to see all other VMs running on that vSphere or that vCenter. And then from there, you'll be able to do your backups. If a VM has an application, you can set it up to be application aware, and all the backup is going to go through compression, encryption, and duplication on the fly. And then it's going to hit the backup server. On the backup server is really where Vembu differentiates itself from other vendors out there. We have our own patent-pending file system called Vembu Hive. And what this file system does, it basically strips away the metadata and puts the data into chunk format. What it allows us to do is it allows us to do some very unique restore features. I see the Stravos has joined. Hi, Stravos.
Hi to all. Sorry for the delay. I had an issue with the customer.
No problem. You haven't missed anything that important. I've been going through the company and some of the features about BDR.
Yeah, I know the stuff, so it was no issue. Okay.
And then maybe if you have any questions, you can ask them at any point.
Okay.
Okay. So as I was saying, on the backup server, you have several restore features itself that you can do instantly on the fly. So you have instant boot, which allows you to instantly boot a VM from VMware in Hyper-V in a matter of seconds. So we recommend your backup server to run Windows 2008 R2, 2012 R2, or Ubuntu 14.04 LTS. And the reason why we recommend those OSs is because they come pre-built with the hypervisor, which allows you to do the instant boot feature. We also do have some minimum requirements for the backup server, like 8 gigs or higher, quad-core processor, and 64-bit architecture. Going back to the different restores, we also have instant mount, which gives you the ability to mount the VM as a drive on the backup server, so you can do granular recovery of the folders and files within that VM. And then if you had any applications on any of the VMs, of course you can do the granular recovery of, for example, Exchange. You can do mailbox recovery or mail level recovery, or if you had any databases, you can do table level recovery, etc. One quick thing I would like to note is that the backup server can also be run as a VM itself. If you do decide to run the backup server as a VM, you will lose the instant boot feature, but you will still remain with the other features available for restore. So, any questions, Tasos or Bravo?
You said that having a backup, we can or the customer may restore not only the virtual machine but any applications running on the virtual machine, like mailboxes and databases. Correct?
Yes.
Is this performed with the same license? You pay for a backup license, and this allows you to restore a virtual machine or applications running on the virtual machine.
Yeah. Basically, licensing, when it comes to licensing, I'll skip to it. Endpoints and physical servers are completely free, and if you're running any application for your physical server, as long as you're taking a disk image of it, it will be free. The only thing you would pay for is VMware and Hyper-V, which are virtual environments, and it does include the application.
You mean that when backing up a physical server or a virtual machine from the customer side to the disaster recovery site, meaning our data center, the only license we will need is a single backup license?
You would need a backup license for the client agents that you installed on the different environments. So let's say that you have a customer and he has two virtual environments. He has one VMware, one Hyper-V, and maybe he has a physical server that he wants to protect. Then in that case, you would only pay for two licenses, for the VMware and the Hyper-V.
Regardless of the number of virtual machines we will be backing up?
Yeah, regardless of the number of virtual machines. All that you pay for, the licensing is based on the number of sockets that the host virtual machine has.
So if the customer just needs us to back up a single virtual machine, will we have to pay for his entire Hyper-V infrastructure? Is the licensing based on the on-premise infrastructure or the disaster recovery infrastructure that we will be hosting?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Is licensing based on the on-premise customer resources or on the disaster recovery infrastructure that we will be hosting in our data center? Let me give you an example. We have a customer with a VMware cluster hosting 20 virtual machines.
Okay.
And that customer only wants to back up. Will we have to pay for a license covering his entire VMware cluster, or is the licensing more granular in based on the number of the actual VMs he wants to back up?
We don't do licensing based on VMs. We do licensing based on basically host servers. So yeah, in the host servers, we count the sockets in those host servers. So one socket is going to be $240 a year.
I see. Okay. We will spend some time on the licensing later on, I believe. So you can continue. Okay.
So I'm going to pass it over to Thiyagu. He's going to explain the client agent, and he's going to explain some features of the backup server, and then we can talk a little bit about the licenses.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Orlando. So talking about the product, so the product is divided into two different sections. The first one is the client console, the client agent, where you would be installing it on the servers that you would like to back up. And then you would have a backup server thing where you would be installing the server management console, and you would be having that as a centralized management console to go ahead and manage your restores and other things. So in order for your client agent, you could just go ahead and download the client agent, and you could go ahead and install it on any server or workstations that you are planning to backup. And it's going to be a web-based application. So once you have the client agent installed on the machine, you could actually access the client agent from any browser that is available on that particular machine. So the screen which I've shared right now is going to be the client console, the client agent console, where you would log in, and this is where you would go ahead and have all your backup scheduled for that particular client. And so talking about the backups which we support. So the backup types which we support is virtualization backup. And a virtualization backup, we do backups for VMware and Hyper-V. And then we support disk image backups, which is purely designed for backing up your physical server. And the last one is file backup, which is a legacy backup method where you would just go ahead and specify which file and folder that you would like to backup. So we'll talk about each and everything in detail. So basically, if you go with VMware enabled environment, you could have two different backup strategies that you could implement. So if you have a SAN enabled network, you could go ahead and have a SAN enabled transport mode.
Sorry for interrupting, but our infrastructure is mostly Hyper-V. So you may focus on Hyper-V.
Okay, in that case, okay, if you have a Hyper-V enabled environment, the first thing you would be doing is like you would be downloading this BDR client and you would be installing the BDR client on the Hyper-V host. And once the installation is done on that Hyper-V host, you could log into the client console, go to Hyper-V backup, where it would automatically show up the guest VMs which is running on that particular Hyper-V host. So you could actually go ahead and schedule, or you could go ahead and select the VMs that you would like to backup, and you could go ahead and schedule it. The scheduling is pretty simple and straightforward, where you could either do it every few hours or run daily based on your requirement. And then comes the retention policies. By default, if you perform hourly backup, you could restore up to 3 restore points, or you could retain up to 3 restore points by default, or you could have a maximum of 12 restore points for that particular day. In case if you perform a daily backup, you could have up to 3 restore points, or you could increase it and you could have the maximum of 90 restore points. So our backup strategy works in such a way that the first backup which is configured for any client would only be a full backup, and all other corresponding backups which is going to be running is all incremental. So you would have daily incrementals which would be running. And apart from that, we also have additional full backup options. Basically, if you would like to go ahead and perform additional full backup irrespective of your incrementals, you could enable this option and you could go ahead and perform additional full backups either on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis based on your requirement. And then you could just go ahead and save these configuration, name the backup, and you could have the backup scheduled to run to the backup server. So this is pretty simple as how you would be configuring your Hyper-V backups. And apart from Hyper-V, you have physical servers available on your network or on your environment. Is that right?
Excuse me?
Do you have any physical servers running on your environment?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So yeah, now we'll talk about the next backup method, which is disk image backup. So disk image backup is purely designed for backing up your physical servers. So what we do is like you could go ahead and install the BDR client on the physical server that you would like to backup, and then we go ahead and use Microsoft VSS Snapshot to go ahead and take a snapshot of the hard disk which is available on that physical server. And then we go ahead and save this snapshot as image backup on our backup server, so that in case if you have a disaster, you could actually go ahead and mount this image backup virtually, and you could have that image backup running as a VM on your environment. So
Okay.
when it comes to the configuration part, for the first time when you go ahead and install the BDR client on the physical server which you would like to backup, it would be prompting you to go ahead and perform a driver installation. So once you go ahead and install the drivers, it would automatically show up the partitions which is available on that particular server. So you would basically be selecting the partition which you would like to backup, and it would also be including the boot partition which is required and which is necessary for instant boot and other things to happen. So once that is selected, then you would be scheduling the backups. You could either run it every few minutes or run daily based on your requirement. And then comes the retention policies, where you could either have a 3 restore points for a day or a 3 restore points if you perform a daily backup. And additional to that, if that physical server is running any applications like Exchange, SQL, or SharePoint, you could go to application aware option and you could go ahead and enable this application aware process, so that we go ahead and take a consistent database snapshot of that application which is running on that physical server, and we also go ahead and help you in performing log truncation, so that you could go ahead and perform a granular restore of applications. And then you could just go ahead and save the backup, name the backup, and you could have the backup scheduled to run. And the last backup method is going to be file backup, which is a legacy backup method where you would just go ahead and specify which file and folder that you would like to backup. So you could just go ahead and select the files and folders that you would like to backup, and you could go ahead and schedule it. When it comes to file backup scheduling, you have multiple options, like you could either run it every few hours, daily, weekly, continuous, or run only once based on your requirement. And additional to that, when it comes to the retention policies for file backup, by default, we retain the last 5 versions of that file available on our backup server. So in case when you're trying to perform a restore, you could go ahead and restore to any one of the last 5 versions which is available. So basically, if you click on edit, you could also go ahead and increase the number of versions that you would like to retain. So if you either you could go with version-based retention, or you could go with time-based retention. If you go with version-based retention, you could go ahead and have up to 99 versions that you could retain for a particular file or a folder. And in case if you go with time-based retention, irrespective of the versions, you could go ahead and retain a particular file or a folder to a maximum of 10 years. And then once this configuration is done, you could just go ahead and name the backups, and you would have the backup scheduled to run to your backup server. So these are the types of backups that you can do from the client console, or these are the different types of backup configurations that can be done. So once you have the backup scheduled to run, like basically if you have a backup which is scheduled to run to the backup server, by default your data gets encrypted, it gets compressed, and we also go ahead and use fixed length deduplication. So by having a high-end compression and deduplication which is happening on the go to the backup server, you would actually go ahead and have the actual size of the data which is being backed up would be in a compressed format, and you would actually save a huge amount of data space on your backup server. So this is a pretty much high-level overview of the client configuration. So if you have any questions, you can let me know. If not, we would talk about the recovery options which is available.
This operation of backing up a physical server, is this also a way of performing P2V, physical to virtual?
That's exactly right. Just by having a single disk image backup, you could actually perform, you have several recovery options available. So you could perform a live instant boot, you could perform a P2V conversion, you could go ahead and restore a particular partition, or you could go ahead and convert this particular file to a different file format of your choice, or you could also go ahead and perform granular restore of files and folders and granular restore of applications.
Is this backup a bare metal backup?
Yeah, we do so. Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, so we support bare metal restore. So basically, if you have an image backup available, and if that physical server is completely down or crashed, you could actually go ahead and use our recovery CD, which is available in our website. So basically, if you go to vembu.com/try page, you could download this recovery CDs, which is available for 32-bit and 64-bit. So you could go ahead and use this to create a bootable ISO disk, and using that bootable ISO disk, you could actually go ahead and mount the physical server, which is being crashed, and then you could go ahead and perform driver injection, and then you could go ahead and have access to that particular backup server, and you could go ahead and restore your physical server to the image backup that you would select, and you would have that server completely recovered to that particular state. Okay, and additional to that, you have any other questions? If not, we'll talk about the recovery options.
Okay.
All right. So talking about the recovery options would be performed from the server management console, where you would have the backup server installed, or the server management console would be installed on a backup server, which would either be running a Windows Server 2012 R2 or Windows Server 2008 R2. And if it's a Linux-based server operating system, you could deploy it on Ubuntu 12.4 LTS 64-bit and Ubuntu 14.4 LTS 64-bit. So basically, these are the 4 server-based operating systems where you would be installing this management console software. And now I'll share that particular window, and we'll talk about the recovery options which is available. The screen which I've shared is the management console window, and even this is a web-based application. So once you have the management console installed on the server-based operating system, you could actually access it from any browser that is available on that particular machine. And once you log in under management, the first option which says is list of clients. So basically, if you click on list of clients, it would automatically show up the clients which has been backing up to that particular backup server. And so when you expand each and every client, it would automatically show up the different backup jobs which has been running for each and every client. So basically, if you expand this, you could go ahead and see the backup options. So what are the different backups which has been running for that particular client? And additional to that, we also have something called storage management. So basically, this is where you would actually go ahead and manage your storage. So you could actually use your, like if you have a SAN or a NAS or a direct attached storage or a shared storage, you could go ahead and use that as a destination for all your backups. So in order to manage that storage, you would be going to storage management and you would be selecting which storage that you would like to have the backups running. And now we'll go back to list of clients and we'll talk about the recovery options which is available for disk image backup. And so basically, I have a disk image backup configured for one of the client, and you could actually see we have multiple recovery options available. So the first one we're going to talk about is instant boot. So basically, instant boot is a feature where you could go ahead and perform a live boot of the image backup of that physical server on the hypervisor which is available on the backup server. So basically, if you have a physical server and if that physical server is running any application like Exchange or SQL or SharePoint, and by any chance if that physical server is completely down on your environment and you would like to have that server up and running instantly as it's a bit business critical server, the first recovery option or the first thing that you could do is like instant boot. So basically, if you click on instant boot, we actually go ahead and mount that physical server's image backup on the hypervisor which is available on the backup server, and you would have that image backup running as a VM. So in order to do it, you would first go ahead and select the timestamp which you would like to go ahead and mount it, and then you would be selecting the hard disk which consists of the boot partition and the other partitions, and then you would be selecting the instant boot software. So by default, when you install the server management console on 2008 R2 or 2012 R2, it comes with Hyper-V. So I'm going to go ahead and use that Hyper-V. Then I'm just going to specify the RAM which is required for that image backup to be loaded. And when you click on proceed to review configuration and when you click on instant boot now, it actually goes and mounts this image backup as a VM on the Hyper-V which is available on the backup server. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up the Hyper-V, and you could actually see that a new VM that gets created instantly. So this is the disk image backup which we mounted. So once you have that loaded, you could just go ahead and power up that machine, and you could go ahead and have access to that physical server. I'm sorry, access to that image backup as a VM on your backup server. And once this is up and running, you could just go ahead and specify an IP address and you could directly go ahead and use it for your production. And once you start using it for your production, whatever changes that you do to the backup server would also be taken as a timestamp on regular intervals, so that in case if you would like to perform a bare metal restore, as I told you earlier, we also go ahead and help you in performing a bare metal restore for all your physical servers which is being crashed. And additional to that, if this physical server is running any application like Exchange or SQL or SharePoint, you could actually go ahead and perform granular restore of files and folders and applications. So in order to do that, once you go to the recovery options, you have an option which says attach VHD or mount VHD. So basically, if you click on that particular option, it would automatically mount this image backup as a disk on your disk management console, so that you would be able to go ahead and see that as a drive on your File Explorer window. So I've already mounted this image backup, so you would be getting this particular option under here. So if you click on this option, what actually happens is that it would automatically mount this image backup to the disk management console which is available on the backup server. Once that is mounted, all you could do is like go ahead and open up your File Explorer window, and you could go ahead and browse the files and folders which is available on that particular disk. So thereby you could go ahead and perform granular restore of files and folders. In case if that is running any applications like Exchange or SQL or SharePoint, you would be performing the same steps. You would be just mounting that image backup as a drive on your backup server. And once that is done, you could just go to our website once again, which is vembu.com/trypage, and you could download this recovery tools, which is available like Explorer for SQL or Explorer for Exchange or Explorer for SharePoint, and you could go ahead and perform granular restore of databases. So in case of SQL, you could go ahead and perform a point-in-time restore for your database. And in case of Exchange, you would be able to go ahead and perform granular restore of Exchange mailboxes or individual emails, where you could download it to an Exchange server, restore it to an Exchange server, or you could even download it as a PST file. In case of SharePoint, you would be able to go ahead and perform a complete site level restore. So, and additional to that, we also have another option which says restore. By just using this option, you could go ahead and perform a P2P conversion of that particular image backup of the physical server. So basically, if you click on this option, it would be prompting you to go ahead and select the timestamp which you would like to convert. And once you have the timestamp selected, you would be selecting the disk which you would like to convert. So give me a second. We'll select that particular. And once you have that selected, then you would be selecting the image file format. So you could actually convert that image backup either as a VHT or a VMDK, VHTX, or a RAW format or VMDK flat, so that you could go ahead and have that image backup converted to that file format, and it would be available to you. So once that is available, you could just go ahead and use appropriate hypervisors to have that server up and running as a VM on your environment. And additional to that, we also have another recovery option which is called disk partition restore. So basically, if your physical servers which has been backing up consist of multiple partitions, and if you think one of the partition is corrupted, you could go ahead and perform a disk partition restore, so that you could go ahead and restore that specific partition to the last image backup which has been selected. And in case if you have a Hyper-V enabled environment, you could actually go ahead and restore or download this particular Hyper-V server as a VHT, and you could go ahead and have that server up and running on the different hypervisors which is available on your environment. So these are some of the high-level recovery options which is available with our product. And additional to that, we also have another recovery option, other feature, which is called Cloud DR Management. So basically, if you would like to go ahead and perform an off-site backup to our own cloud running on Amazon AWS S3, you could go ahead and do this. Just once you go to Cloud DR Management, you could enable this feature so that you would be able to go ahead and have the off-site backup running to our cloud. So once you enable it, you could just go ahead and specify the region where you would like to have the off-site backup to be stored. And then you would just go ahead and specify the schedule window when you would like to have the offsite backup to be ran. And then you could just go ahead and save these options so that you would have this backup taken as an offsite backup. The data which is available on the backup server would be taken as an offsite backup to our cloud. So once you have the data available in our cloud instance, if there is a disaster, you have a complete site level disaster, and if your entire network is down, you could actually go ahead and request for an instant spin up feature, where we would go ahead and spin up a specific image backup in our cloud instance so that it would be up and running as a VM, and thereby we would be able to go ahead and provide you with a dedicated private VPN access to go ahead and have access to that particular mission. These are some of the high-level recovery options which is available with our product. If you have any questions, you can let me know.
For this final information you gave us about your cloud instances, how do you charge in case the disaster recovery VM goes up in AWS? You charge by the hour, by the day? How does it go?
We have it on different things. Whatever Amazon charges, we would be just sending you that charge. Like if we have it in an hourly basis, or you could have it on a daily basis, like how many days you would like to have this server up and running. Based on that, you would be charged. So we have several things available.
In case the disaster recovery VM goes up, most of the time the disaster recovery will not work instantly. We will need to modify some network settings in order for the disaster recovery VM to become a production VM and serve customers. Will you give us a console in AWS in order to change those settings?
Yes, like you would be provided with a dedicated private VPN login access where you could log into that console and you could go ahead and specify your settings which you would like to go ahead and have. So once you have that settings implemented, thereby you could go ahead and have that particular VM which is running in a cloud instance being added to your network, and you could go ahead and start using it.
I see. Let's go back to the actual backup and restore process. Let's say that we have a customer that has a virtual machine or a physical server on premise, and he wants to back this up in our data center. During the backup process, where do you actually store the data? Do you have an intermediate storage at the customer's premise, and then you sync those data with our data center, or is there the option to directly sync data from the customer side to our disaster recovery site?
Okay, the product is designed in such a way that when you initiate a backup from the client, the data gets directly streamed to the backup server, and it would be connected to, and it would be stored on the data center, which is being connected to the backup server. So there's no option of having a seed backup, which can be done from the client side. The data would be directly backed up to the backup server.
So if let's assume that data is backed up at the backup server, then do we need to sync those data with the actual data found in the disaster recovery Hyper-V server? I mean, do we have to store backup data in two locations, on the backup server and on the Hyper-V server, on a cluster shared volume?
No, like if the data is already available in the cluster shared volume, you could just go ahead and perform a single backup so that you would have a copy of that.
So, so you're saying that we can directly sync data from the customer side to a cluster shared volume, correct?
Okay. Can you just elaborate this much more in detail so that I can get you the correct answer for you? So you're saying like when you initiate a backup from your client side, your data would automatically be streamed to the backup server, where the backup server in your scenario is located on your data center. Yes. And once it reaches the backup server, then it would have the data getting saved onto the storage location which is being connected to the backup server. So if you connect a NAS or a SAN or a direct attached storage, the data from the client would be backed up, would be running to the backup server, and then it would be running to the storage location. And you would have the data available on that. And if you would like to replicate or take an offsite copy of that data to our cloud, then you could do that.
No,
so
I'm not talking about this case that we are storing data on AWS. We have backed up customer data on your backup server, in quotes, meaning that the backup server will be installed in our premises, and so we have the backup server storage where customer data is stored, and then we need to move this data in the Hyper-V, so that in case of disaster recovery,
so
Hyper-V VM takes over.
Yeah, in that case, once the data is being backed up to the backup server, you could perform a P2V conversion, and you could convert that image backup to a VHD file format, and you could have that up and running on the Hyper-V cluster which is available on your environment.
I see. So in case of disaster recovery, the procedure is that we convert backup data found in the backup server. We convert this to VHD, and then we boot up the VM?
That's exactly right. Boot up the VM on your Hyper-V cluster, which is available.
Yes. One question over here. Can't I use the the instant boot option using NFS to the Hyper-V, and can power up the machine using the backup files directly? Isn't that an alternative?
Okay,
that is an alternative. there. Because when I say conversion, when we say conversion, right, there isn't actually a conversion happening because these files are already available as a VHT files on the backup server. So technically, you could use the NFS share mount to boot these VHT files onto another Hyper-V server and get it up and running instantly on your Hyper-V cluster without you having to actually perform any restore process because these are all instantly available as VHT files on the backup server.
Okay. Continue, please.
Okay, all right. And additional to that, we also have a reporting function. Under reports, we have something called backup status report. So when you go to backup status report, it would automatically show up all the backups which is running to the backup server listed. So it gives you an overall report of each and every backup which has been running to the backup server, whether the backup is a successful backup or a failed backup or a missed backup. And you have an option to download this as a report, or you could also go ahead and schedule these backup status report as an email. So basically you could enable this scheduling feature and you could go ahead and specify the email address to whom you would like to have the reports sent to, and then you have options to specify filters like I would be notified for failed jobs or missed jobs, and you could specify the duration and you could save these configurations so that on every day without you logging into the backup server you would be receiving reports of these backups, and you could go ahead and check the status of the backup report. And additional to that, we also have another reporting function which is called backup verification report. So this is going to be an automated process which is going to happen on the backup server. What actually happens on the background is like once the backup is completed, we actually go ahead and randomly pick up the image backup of a particular server, and we go ahead and mount that image backup on the Hyper-V which is available on the backup server. So once we mount that, we actually go ahead and check whether that image backup which is mounted is a successful and a bootable image backup. So once that is completely loaded and up and running, we actually go ahead and take a screenshot of those, and we go ahead and send you as an email to give you a confirmation that the backup which is completed is a successful and a bootable image backup. So thereby you could just go ahead and click on the screenshots and you could go ahead and check the status of the report. If that is a failed backup, you could actually rerun it to make sure that you would have a successful backup available, and at any point of disaster you would be able to go ahead and recover the data completely without any data loss. And additional to that, we also have this product available for a 30-day trial. So maybe I would suggest you to go ahead and download the 30-day evaluation copy to go ahead and completely evaluate the product, because we have a lot more features available in this. So you could go ahead and once you start evaluating the product, you get to know more about it. And during the course of evaluation, if you have any technical queries or technical assistance, you could also go ahead and call into our 24/7 technical support, which is always available. So you could go ahead and either reach us through the telephone number which is available on the website, or you could also email us to vembu-support@vembu.com, so that we would have our technicians helping you right away with any kind of technical queries that you have or that you come up with.
One more question, please. This management console that you are showing us, is this running on the backup server?
Yes, this is running on the backup server. So for our demo purpose, we have this running on Windows Server 2008 R2, because we use Hyper-V, which is in order to perform instant boot. In order for Hyper-V to be available on a Windows-based server operating system, it would be available on a 2008 R2 or 2012 R2. And in case of Linux, you could have it on Ubuntu 12.4 or Ubuntu 14.4, where you would have Linux KVM, where you could use that to go ahead and perform live instant boot.
Okay, since we will be, since what we need is to integrate this functionality with our marketplace, our web-based marketplace. I have two questions for you. First question is, does this management console has an API so that we can integrate this with our marketplace?
Marketplace is,
Okay,
you,
so
you understand the issue? You understand what market?
yeah.
It's an issue.
Yeah. So what we do is all the functions that you see on the user interface right now, It's all exposed through a RESTful API. So it is
Okay.
pretty easy to connect this into your marketplace. Like you can do the provisioning of the backup services from your marketplace. You can have the customers register for the service on the marketplace, and everything is automated through a RESTful API from the product. And we have done this with few other customers and distributors in Europe, so we understand exactly your requirement when you say marketplace and ability to have the product listed there.
Okay, the second question is this. Will we be able to use a single management portal installed and running on a single backup server in order to serve all of our customers? Is this web console multi-tenant? Can we create separate accounts for each one of our customers in order for them to log in and handle their backup and restore processes? Or will we have will we need a separate backup server for each customer?
Okay, so from the customer perspective, they need a separate backup servers so that the backup servers are designed per customer, and the backup server itself can also be run like a virtual appliance. So it need not have to be a physical server; it could also be a virtual server running
So
on VirtualBox.
so we need a backup server per customer, correct?
That is correct. However, we do offer multi-tenancy we have what is called as a portal that we give it to our resellers and distributors, and through that portal they can create customer accounts. They can provision the services to their customers, so that way the customers will get an email from where to download the backup server, where to download the client agents, and you can do all those management functionalities from the portal itself. And the customers can also log into portal and they can download the client agents, they can see the backup jobs, and they can monitor and manage everything. So that will be provided to you.
So
We have one clarification. We already have portal account credentials in all levels, but I didn't have the time to demonstrate that to my colleagues. So I will. We already have that accounts.
Okay.
They are already in place.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, continue.
Yes.
Any other questions, anybody?
No. Like Stavros said, he knows more that we don't. So we don't. So we will have to wait for Stavros in order to demonstrate the solution. And I believe most of our questions will be answered.
I will call you later, guys, to arrange a meeting for tomorrow or Monday. It depends on us internally.
Okay.
Quick note, Tassos, if you do have like a testing environment that you use for your own like lab or something, you can actually try it out the product for 30 days. And it's a
Yes.
free trial. So
Right.
if you want to do that too, you can try that out.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a very good demo, guys. I mean, honestly, of all the years that I've been watching demos, I had a few questions, but they were answered. Meanwhile, so I'm, left sitting here speechless, having no questions to ask. Of course, as far as a few ones that I have. So let's Stavros and Tassos, let's get together and discuss all that. And then once we do that, then I'll get back to Orlando